Hey everybody, Lon Gold here, comedian, actor, pro-Semite. I am the host of a show called Stars of David, and I have a trusty sidekick named
Eli Leonard.
Anyway, last season on Stars of David, we schmoozed, we joked, we asked big questions. It's going to be even better this season. Wouldn't you say, Eli?
Yeah, the laughs are going to be bigger because I'm going to be talking more.
So join us for conversations with the likes of Yochai Sponder, Yonit Levy, Biana Golodriga, Tiffany Haddish, and more. And when I say more, I mean way more. In fact, ending the season with a superstar of David. So you're going to learn stuff. You're going to think about life, identity, and the joy and occasional pain of being Jewish. It's going to be what, Eli?
It's going to be a machaya.
A machaya. So tune in to Stars of David with Elon Gold wherever you get your podcasts, or find us on YouTube at Unpacked Podcasts. You're going to love it. I promise. Good Yontif.
Hey everyone, Noam here. While we prep for a brand new season of Wandering Jews with Mijal and Noam launching in February, we're wrapping up our staff picks countdown with our staff's picks of their number one episode from this past season, our deep dive into Shabbat. In this conversation, Mijal and I move past the long lists of do's and don'ts to uncover the deeper joy and the purpose of the Jewish Sabbath. Drawing on Torah wisdom along with thoughts and reflections from the likes of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and Rabbi Joseph Ber Soloveitchik, we explore Shabbat as a 25-hour palace in time. Not our lingo, Heschel's. A weekly digital detox, spiritual reset, and celebration of meaning. If you've ever wondered what Shabbat is really about, like what it really is all about, regardless of how much or how little of it you practice, this is the episode for you. Hey everyone, welcome to Wandering Jews with Mijal and Noam.
I'm Mijal.
And I'm Noam, and this podcast is our way of trying to unpack those really big questions being asked by young people about Israel, about Judaism, and the Jewish experience, with the goal of leaving every episode in a better place than where we started. We absolutely don't have it all figured out, but we love working through it all with you, and I love working it through together with you, Mijal.
No, it's the first time you've said that.
Well, I mean it.
That sounds really genuine.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're proud to be collaborating with Sefaria and the Simchat Torah Challenge on this episode, along with all the other episodes of our In the Beginning mini-series, in which we're unpacking the foundational questions of Jewish life. We're big fans of these incredible organizations, and you can learn more about the amazing work they do through the links in the show notes.
And if you're interested in sponsoring an episode of Wandering Jews with Mijal and Noam, or even an upcoming mini-series, be in touch at, you guessed it, wanderingjews@unpacked.media.
Okay. So what are we talking about today?
So, Noam, I want to talk to you about Shabbat.
Yes.
Shabbat, the seventh day of the week, starts Friday night at sunset and Saturday night at 3 stars. Is there a name for that? Stars? No.
It's really dark.
Nightfall.
By the way, just one quick note on that. Think about it like outside of a Jewish context. If you're like, when there are 3 stars out at night,
right.
That's when something ends or begins. You're like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So there isn't a name for it that I know of in English, but the point is it's a 25-hour experience from sunset till when there are 3 stars outside. So it's not 24 hours, 25 hours.
Yeah. So now a question that I heard from my producer, actually, if Shabbat wasn't part of Jewish commandments, like let's say like suddenly, right, we got a message that no, actually Shabbat is not one of the 10 commandments. It's not one of the things we're supposed to keep. Like the 7th day, no special significance, no list of things you cannot do and things you should do. Would you still keep Shabbat?
So the way I think about that is I would like to think that the answer is yes.
You would like to think that?
Yeah, but I think that the human condition would argue that it's no.
I'm asking about the Noam condition. Like, what would you?
So I think that it's because of the commandedness that I have the ability, the luxury to add so much to my life, which allows me to observe Shabbat. But if I didn't have that commandedness, if I wasn't part of a community that had this for 3,300 years, I don't think that I would necessarily have the discipline to allow myself to experience such a joy.
Right. It's funny, by the way, when I was younger, like a kid in elementary school, I really did not like Shabbat because, especially when I lived in Uruguay, I went to a school there where I was one of the only kids who observed Jewish ritual to some extent. So Shabbat for me back then represented limitations.
Mhm.
My parents, we'll get soon to why we have this limitation, but my parents wouldn't let me go to parties.
Mhm.
They wouldn't let me go to friends' houses who were doing, I wasn't really allowed, like socially it was very hard for me. And I remember being so resentful about Shabbat.
What age is this?
Maybe I was like 9 or 10, 11. I don't know. I was like annoyed. I couldn't hang out with my friends.
Right. So I had that in high school.
Okay.
Because the Jewish high school that I went to, the vast majority of the families do not observe Shabbat in a traditional way. So I remember, I'm a bit older than you, Mijal.
Mhm.
I remember
I know.
Y2K. I know. Y2K. Do you know what Y2K is?
Just say,
The year 2000, when
Okay.
2000 was being.
Okay.
So I was a freshman in high school as a ninth grader, and my high school, the kids had just a rocking party, and it fell out on a Friday night. And everyone was going to that party. Everyone. If you were a kid at this high school, you were going to this party, and you were going to have a darn good time at this party. And I didn't go. I couldn't go because it was on Friday night. I'd have to drive to it, and it would be a very not Shabbat kind of party.
Right.
And so I couldn't go to it.
Right. It's funny though, like as an adult, even if I didn't have to keep Shabbat from the way that I understand Jewish law and commandedness, I could not imagine my life without it. I think it is use the word joy. It is the greatest gift.
It's a gift.
Privilege. I don't even know like what words to use about how much I love Shabbat. Like my brain on Shabbat feels like a different brain. My soul feels like a different soul. My family feels like a different family. My friendships feel like different friendships. Like I do not know what kind of life I would have if I didn't have Shabbat.
Yeah.
Which is extraordinary. So I want to break down Shabbat a little bit. I think depending on who you're talking to, people often have assumptions. So let's just say some people, you ask them Shabbat, they give you the list of prohibitions they heard about it. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't turn on lights, you can't whatever. Some people will focus on like certain ritual, like you make a blessing on the wine, you make kiddush, you do hamotzi, blessing on the challah, you go to synagogue. Others will focus on on aspects like you get to rest, you get to pause, the environment, you know what I mean, connection with the world, all of that. So I want to touch a little bit on many of these aspects. But first I want to start, Noam, with almost like a primer to explain in very technical terms before we get to the spirit and the meaning and the reason why you call it a joy and I'm calling it a gift and it's all of that and more. Before we get into that and why it is such a necessity, I believe, for us right now in this world to have Shabbat, I want to just explain it technically. We're not going to go super in depth a different time. I think we should, but just like in a very technical level, what is Shabbat and how is it observed? And I'll also say, because we both really value the pluralism and diversity of the Jewish experience, that there's many ways to celebrate Shabbat and to observe Shabbat. We're going to start with a more traditional way of explaining how to observe Shabbat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Shabbat is introduced to the Jewish people in the book of Exodus, right? And the Bible doesn't give out all the list of prohibitions that we have today. And we're going to get to those prohibitions. No, I'm giving you examples for observant traditional Jews.
Yeah.
If you ask them, what can't you do on Shabbat?
Right.
What would you say? Give me some examples.
Rub sticks together and make fire.
Okay, you cannot make fire. Give me contemporary examples.
Right. So that's an example. These are called the 39 prohibited acts, the melachot.
But like today, what are things that
Well, what observant Jews would say you can't do on Shabbat?
Yeah.
They would say you can't drive.
You can't drive
They would say that you can't carry
outside of
the eruv.
of like a certain area.
Certain area,
Okay.
which we have to do a whole separate episode
Yes.
on that.
Yes, you can't use electricity. That's like a major one right now.
Right. Electricity, which means turning on TVs, turning on your phone, using your phone.
Right. You cannot engage in certain commerce.
Cannot engage, right. You can't engage in business back and forth. You can't handle money and use it to make a transaction.
You cannot cook, you cannot bake, you cannot like a whole range. If you're a mechanic, you cannot fix a car.
Right.
There's also, by the way, disagreement. So for example, do you ride a bike on Shabbat? I'm not putting you in the spot here.
I do not ride a bike.
Okay, I ride a bike on Shabbat. So I know that sounds like a small disagreement.
This is an Ashkenazi Sephardi through and through.
Not all Sephardim agree with me. So sometimes my kids would ask me, because I have taught them to observe Shabbat in this way. For example, if they're coloring or something, I'm like, it's Shabbat.
Oh, writing, by the way. Yeah, we should have said that.
Yeah, as a parenting side point.
Typing, yeah.
My kids don't always listen to me with everything I tell them. But if it's Shabbat and by mistake, my daughter, let's say, is like, didn't realize and picked something up. And I'm like, it's Shabbat.
Right.
No questions asked.
Right.
It's like perfect parenting. Like, okay.
Yeah. I've said to my 7-year-old, and like Wednesday, if she can't do something, I'm like, it's Shabbat.
Oh, you do that?
No,
that's
malpractice. That's malpractice. No, but you're absolutely right. This notion of just saying, hey, can we do this? It's Shabbat. Like, it's just like this guiding, it's like the North Star.
Right.
You don't even have to like go into depth on it.
And I would say that when I've been with friends,
as you get older, by the way. When
I've been with friends who aren't Jewish or individuals who are exploring joining the Jewish people, sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming because it ends up being like thousands of little rules that we might not even notice. Right. Like, how do you make coffee on Shabbat? I'm like, I leave a hot water thing plugged in from before.
You don't even know that these things are such Jewish things that you're like, oh, I had no idea.
Right. Or like a hot plate, right? That you live with like a timer to warm up food because you can't cook or this or that. So there's like a ton of laws that really shape the way that we observe Shabbat. Just in terms of like the technical origin of this. So Noam, you began to say this before. The rabbis of the Mishnah and the Talmud identify 39 creative activities that were used. It's a bit convoluted, that were used in the wilderness by the Israelites to create the tabernacle. So the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the portable temple in the wilderness, right? So imagine this like temple that is made up of beautiful fabrics. And there were basically like 39 creative activities, from baking the bread that you had to serve in it, to sewing the fabrics, to dyeing the fabrics, all of that. And the rabbis identified those 39. So keep Shabbat, build the tabernacle. The rabbis look at this and they said, oh, this is how we learn what we are allowed to do on Shabbat.
Exactly.
And now, because the rabbis always do this, from these 39 creative activities, within each of them, they find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things that you cannot do.
Right.
Right. And it even evolves to modernity. So we don't have technology. Like my son asked me when I said this to him, and he said, well, Ima, they didn't have iPads back then. Right. Why can't I use my iPad on Shabbat? You know? Yeah. And I had to explain to him. I said, well, I didn't use these words with him, but I was like, more modern rabbis, right? They extended Jewish law and they identified electricity as something that is part of, like, turning on a fire, for example, which is like,
or building bone.
Right. So they locate modern things in this ancient 39.
Creative acts.
Yes. Yeah. So that's basically like a primer on Shabbat, on everything that you're not allowed to do.
But you know what's so interesting?
Yeah.
And maybe you're going to get to this. You started with the 39 prohibited acts from the book of Exodus as the storytelling of Shabbat. And where my mind goes is the storytelling of Shabbat is actually the first 2 chapters of Genesis.
I think you're going to get into like the positive meaning. Why do we keep Shabbat, right?
Yeah, it could be, but the very much the one of the reasons why I would like to think, when you asked me that question at the outset about would I observe Shabbat if not for the commandment to observe Shabbat, and I said I'd like to think that I would, but the commandedness is very essential to my ability to do it and having the discipline. But a better version of me, a better version of Noam would say, well, my goal is to always to imitate God, to engage in imitatio Dei. And imitatio Dei is this concept of working, producing, creating for 6 days, and then on the 7th day having this radical idea that we imitate God and we positively rest. Right. And we focus on that.
So you're right. Maybe we should have started with that. Like we have in the Bible, like Zachor v'Shamor, like remember, like on Shabbat you are to remember.
Yeah.
And then you have to, how do you say Shamor? Like observe in some way.
Yeah.
So
guard, protect. Yeah.
Right. So Shamor is associated by the rabbis with all the negative commandments, all the things you cannot do. Right? Like don't do this, don't do that. And I think very often people do what I just did, which is let me talk about everything I can do. Yeah. But there's Zachor, which is why do we do this? And according to our tradition, there's 2 main reasons as to why we keep Shabbat, right? One is, and we mentioned them when we make Kiddush, the blessing over the wine. One is to remember the act of creation. So as you describe right now, Noam, in Genesis, we are told that the world is created, like the act of creation, like God uses the first 6 days to create the universe. And on the 7th day, God ceases activity.
Yeah.
Some people say God rests. I grew up with a father who was very insistent on like Jewish grammar.
Yeah, what is it?
So my dad always says like God ceases, right? Ceases activity as opposed to like resting. What I just heard from you, Noam, is to say, well, part of what we're supposed to do here is that we have this, we learn from God. God produced, created for 6 days. And then there's one day in which you stop. And the day in which you stop becomes actually like the most sacred day of all.
Yep.
It almost like becomes like the climax after those 6 days for the seventh day. The second reason, by the way, that we mention in Kiddush and that traditionally we say is that we observe and celebrate Shabbat, remembering the Exodus from Egypt.
That's right.
That God intervened in history and took us out. And I'll say there that there's something there really interesting, that Egypt represents bondage, right? It represents incessant work, right? In which you do not control your time. You do not control like what you produce. It controls you. And leaving Egypt,
which is all consuming.
Yeah, it's almost like the capitalist nightmare. I'm not saying that capitalism is bad, but like the nightmarish version of it is Egypt, right? And then you have Shabbat, which is liberation. And it's not like do nothing, but it's you have control over your time and over what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. So then the two different aspects of the Kiddush that you're referring to is that God created the world, and then also God intervenes in the world. Those are the two aspects.
Yeah, it's Genesis and Exodus, I would say. It's creation and liberation that are both folded into Shabbat. So, but I would say, just going back to what you were mentioning earlier, Noam, I think that, people celebrate Shabbat in different ways. And there's different levels of observance, different attitudes towards observance. As an example, just to make it more understood, the conservative movement, for example, there was a very famous response in the 1950s in which the Rabbinical Assembly of the conservative movement, for example, decided that at a time in which Jews were moving to the suburbs and they were living further away from each other, they were going to allow driving on Shabbat if you wanted to be part of a Jewish community that would celebrate Shabbat.
Well, they would allow driving on Shabbat to the synagogue.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So that's important clarification.
If you wanted to be part of a Jewish community that celebrates Shabbat, to the synagogue. Right. Which means that you have Jews who celebrate and observe Shabbat in different ways right now.
And that ruling allowed for Jewish people to not congregate in one very specific area also in many ways, because it said that you don't have to be in walking distance to a synagogue. Right.
A different way of saying that, Noam, is that there is not just a theological and legal difference, but a sociological difference between those who drive on Shabbat and those who don't drive on Shabbat. If you do not drive on Shabbat and you want to be part of a Jewish community, you literally have to think about your home and your kids' school. Like you have to think about
and potentially real estate prices.
Real estate prices.
Like seriously, that's a real thing.
Right. So like you have to think about everything in your zip code as allowing you to be able to walk to shul.
Right.
And if you drive on Shabbat, you don't have to have the same calculus.
Exactly.
So it does end up shaping sociologically different Jewish experiences about Shabbat. Interestingly, I think we have it easier than I can say to you, because your great grandparents were in America.
All my grandparents were born in America.
Okay. So you and we have it easier than your Jewish ancestors who came to America in the early 1900s. Because for many of them coming to America, you had to work on Shabbat or you would not be able to make a living.
There's that song, Ain't Gonna Work on Saturday.
I don't know the song.
I don't know. That's the end of what I know.
Right. But that was like a real, big, identity marker.
100%.
Right. And like many people who were like in Europe thinking about coming to America, there was like a fear, you'll come to America and in order to make a living, you have to like work on Shabbat.
Yeah.
I would say today, the idea of like a 2-day weekend has become really prevalent. By the way, Jews were the first to have a weekend. Our producer reminded us that the Romans, when Jews wouldn't work on Shabbat, they just thought of them as like lazy. Yeah. But today, like the idea of a weekend has been pretty mainstream around the world. So what makes Shabbat countercultural today, I would argue, is not that you don't work on Shabbat, but is that you don't use your phone for 25 hours.
Yeah. That this concept of the digital detox.
Yep.
That has become so in vogue, so popular throughout society, is something that the Jewish experience has demanded for a very long time.
Yeah, for a very long time, but I would say not for a very long time, because we're only in the digital age now. So one of the things that I always think about is that in many ways, like Shabbat has given us gifts that we never knew we would need.
Right. But so it's your father wouldn't appreciate this, but it's the revolution of rest. That's what Shabbat is. It's the revolution of ceasing. So you spoke about the early Roman thinkers, and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel has this magnum opus, the Sabbath.
Yep. And also his quote on Shabbat. He says, Shabbat is a palace in time.
A palace in time. That's
palace in time. Heschel and others talk about how one of Judaism's great contributions to the world is to have sacred time. We often think about like sacred space, but sacred time is amazing because you can do it anywhere.
Exactly.
You know?
But what the thing that Rabbi Heschel speaks about is that in the Sabbath, and I think the Sabbath is probably one of the most important, and it's such a small, it's very accessible, and anyone could read it and learn from it and be like, wow, this feels contemporary. This feels like it could have been written in 2025. And what Heschel talks about is this debate between what he viewed as the Roman approach. He specifically talks about Philo. Philo was a first or Greek approach, first century Hellenistic Jewish thinker. He explained that Shabbat is a day of rest to regain strength and to reduce energy, meaning the purpose of Shabbat was pragmatic. It was for luxury. It's for leisure. That's how he understood it.
So Shabbat in the service of the other 6 days.
Yes, it's exactly. Shabbat exists in order to invigorate you, to energize you for the 6 days. What Heschel talks about, he says, no, the Sabbath is not for the sake of the weekdays. The weekdays are for the sake of Sabbath. And he says it's not about recuperation, but elevation. What we were talking about, sacred time as spiritual peak, right? That revolution, that the purpose of existence is not our work,
right,
but the purpose of existence is something that is much more elevated. This liberation, this ability to say that time belongs to me and I could exist within that time. When you have 6 days of work and you're constantly thinking of production, you're constantly thinking about achieving, it's very hard to actually pause and appreciate and reflect.
It's funny, Noam, you're actually making me think of my Saba, my mother's father, Saba David, and of blessed memory. And he was famous amongst all the grandchildren for really loving Shabbat, right? So like treating it as like the pinnacle of his week. So we would always make fun of him in like a loving way, because let's say he loved to go to the market and like buy fruits in Israel. So let's say he would go on Monday or Tuesday, whatever, and be like, oh my God, I just heard the most beautiful like fruits. I'm going to buy it for Shabbat. But then the next day he would find better fruit. And it's like, no, this is the fruit for Shabbat. And so it's like, and there's something there that like any individual, like I'm thinking a little bit about Marx right now. Sorry, like that.
Karl Marx?
Yes, Karl Marx. Not that he's like, whatever. I don't want to put him and my grandfather in the same sentence. Sorry. But Marx wrote about individuals like alienation from labor and the products of what they do. And there's something about Shabbat in which you are able to see yourself almost like, I'm trying to not romanticize it too much, but I do love Shabbat. Like be like,
I think it's the most romantic thing we do in Judaism.
It's beautiful. You're like a king or queen. Like you're like, oh, I like Shabbat. I'm going to have like beautiful food on a beautiful table. And I grew up with like different tablecloths for Shabbat, different clothing for Shabbat.
Right. But it's very democratic, also very egalitarian. It's like meaning everyone, there's equality.
Yes.
There's equality. You cannot make
everyone
others
can make
do labor.
Shabbat special. You can make it beautiful and special.
You can make it individual and special. I will say that like this idea of what we just quoted from Heschel and spoke about Heschel versus Philo, and that's a really important distinction. That like I like thinking of like, hey, I'm with non-Jewish friends. How do you explain Shabbat to your non-Jewish friends? Like I like thinking that way, or to Jewish people who don't observe Shabbat. I think the way people would think about it just instinctively is like, oh, it helps you recuperate for the week. No, it's what Heschel does is he says, no, it's not about recuperating for the week. The week is about getting to Shabbat. That's it's an inversion. And this inversion is also spoken about by his contemporary, Rabbi Joseph Ber Soloveitchik, in his unbelievable work that needs to be studied. Again, the Sabbath is a work that we should put in the show notes, but
by
also
Heschel.
By Heschel. The other book that we should put in the show notes is Lonely Man of Faith by Rabbi Joseph Ber Soloveitchik. What Soloveitchik speaks about is there are two different personae that reside within each and every one of us. There's Adam 1, which he refers to as the persona that's about production, that's about, he talks about from the biblical verse that says vikivshuha, that the purpose of life is to conquer, meaning to produce, to achieve. And for me, one of my acronyms that I try to live by, and my colleagues know this about me, my friends know this about me, is GSD, get stuff done. I don't want to talk. I want to know that we are all getting stuff done at the end of the day.
But you do talk a lot now.
Produce. Well, yeah. But production is what it's about. At the end of the day, it's about production.
Achievement, success.
Yeah, success. What that looks like. But that success is overly seductive. And it can't be the purpose. And if you switch the means for the end, then you're engaging in something that's a little bit, maybe even unethical. The end is Adam, is the other part of our persona that exists within each and every one of us.
Say the other one is the end, so you do have both.
No, they have to, Rabbi Soloveitchik they have to somehow merge with each other. There's a thesis, there's an antithesis, and is there a synthesis? Unclear. But the other persona is this persona of Adam too, which is the one that's not passive, but it's an existence of one that is, I would call it in modern parlance, mindful, present, aware, not just about accomplishing, not just about GSD, not just about getting stuff done.
It's also about being a servant, not just someone who does things, but somebody who's serving the world.
Exactly. And so that is the two different aspects of our sense of selves that need to interact with one another. And I view Shabbat in many ways as the ability to live within the realm of Adam too.
Right. And Soloveitchik is drawing there from, if we read Genesis carefully, there's two creation stories.
Exactly.
Right. So we have almost like God creates within us multiplicity about what our purpose is. And in many ways, Shabbat lets us.
I think without Shabbat, it's harder to live with the Adam too.
Right. By the way, just in the last couple of years, I've also just been thinking about the benefits of Shabbat in terms of social media and mental health.
Yeah.
You know how Chabad is known for trying to convince people to do certain commandments? That's not really my thing. I don't go around telling
fill in, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I feel especially after October 7th, I was going to my students and being please, just no social media on Shabbat.
Right.
Just let your brain breathe and heal and be good. And I was almost begging them from a mental health perspective, just saying my brain feels like a different brain this 25 hours. And it is absolutely priceless to have this.
John Haidt says no smartphones until 14 or something like that. And he says no social media until 16. I forget his other rules, but I would add to his list of rules and just be take 25 hours off from your phone.
Yeah, I really want to recommend it. Even if you are Jewish, not Jewish, observant, not observant, just try it out. And I just want to say from a mental health, happiness perspective, also you communicate with your family in such a different way.
I think there's no way to pretend we don't love Shabbat. That's the issue.
Why would we pretend we don't?
Because we could talk about all different aspects. It could be a lot. It could be difficult when you travel, this and that. But at the end of the day, and it's
so worth it.
It's just worth it. What's interesting is historically Jews have not always observed Shabbat so seriously, right? The majority of world Jewry is not observant of Shabbat right now. And Echad Ha'am, one of the great Zionist thinkers, Asher Ginsburg, famously said, more than the Jews have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jews.
Which means what?
I don't know.
Let's unpack it.
I don't know. We should unpack it. Yishai Leibovitz, a great Israeli philosopher, really doesn't like that.
Before you go to let's say, I think it means that we often think, we have to keep Shabbat. But really, when you think about the institution of Shabbat, when it's observed, it does so much for us in terms of our spiritual strength and family life that it's almost it's a talisman of sort. It protects and keeps us.
Yeah. And I think that's why some modern philosophers don't love that line, because then what we're doing is we're instrumentalizing a gift.
Right. So what you're saying is when I'm keep Shabbat because your brain will be good.
Right.
So Yeshayahu Leibovitz would be no, keep Shabbat because God says
because God commanded you.
Do not put any other meaning. Okay. Whatever. I'm inconsistent. Now, let's end with the following. What is one thing that you enjoy doing on Shabbat that is your thing?
I think I spoke about this in our previous episode, Kabbalat Shabbat, Friday night services.
That was not my question. What's one thing?
Give me an example. Okay, I'll give one about my daughter. Can I do that?
It's a bit cheating, but I'll allow it.
Well, it's the same thing. So I have a son and 3 daughters. Thank God. Boo, boo, boo. And they're conditioned from early in their lives that when they wake up from Sunday through Friday, they watch Mickey Mouse as babies.
Okay.
1 or 2 years old. That's what they're doing. They're watching Mickey Mouse.
Okay.
And they're getting like a regular breakfast. Now, I am embarrassed to say that every single morning, my 2-year-old now gets pancakes every single morning. And
homemade or?
I'm not answering that question.
Okay.
Okay. And she is hilarious because when she wakes up and you go into her room, the first thing that Sarit says is pancakes. That's just conditioned to say pancakes. We're like, okay, this is crazy. But every single kid, it was very hard when they started getting older. You can't watch Mickey Mouse in my house on Shabbat because we take a digital detox. We take 25 hours off from screens. We don't do screen time. But they don't really get it. And in fact, I can't say to my 1.5, 2-year-old, it's Shabbat. And that doesn't work for her. So instead, what we do is I've been doing this with my son who's 12. And it's so nice. And my last child, my daughter who's now 2, what we've conditioned them to do is I'd go in their room. They wake up at 6:45 a.m. It's like clockwork. And she says, pancake, Mickey Mouse. And I say, it's Shabbat. I have a cookie. And
she like the cookies more than pancakes?
She loves it. So what I do every single Shabbat morning, every single week.
Pavlov, what's it called?
Pavlovian, exactly. Yeah. So every single Shabbat morning, she says to me now, I love this, cookies and quacks. Because we go for a walk at 7 a.m. so that my wife could sleep. My kids, older kids aren't up yet. And we take a walk with cookies and we look for ducks. That's what we do every Shabbat morning.
You change Mickey Mouse for Donald Duck.
Yeah, exactly. Mickey Mouse turns into ducks, Donald Duck, and pancakes turn into cookies. What about you?
Very nice. Well, I'll just say like selfishly on Shabbat, I try to read. I try to have like time that is mine and that I get to read for no purpose.
But when you say no purpose, do you read for things that you could then teach about later in the week?
No. So usually my Friday night and Shabbat morning, I'm preparing like the Torah portion. So I'm reading, you know what I mean? Things that I have to read. And then in the afternoon, I don't always get it, but I try to at least have half an hour where I'm reading like just for me, you know.
I have to do more of that. That's a great one.
Yeah. It feels really good. And it's like my Shabbat reading.
What do you read?
Right now, it's like, I wanted you to ask that. No, just kidding.
What do you read?
Right now, I'm reading The Power Broker by Robert Caro about Robert Moses.
Why are you reading it?
Honestly, I started this other ritual with my son and my daughter that whenever we are in Lower Manhattan for Shabbat, we go to the Strand bookstore before Shabbat and we buy books. So everybody gets to like choose 2 books for Shabbat. It's a bit expensive habit, but it's lovely. And a few months ago, I was like telling my son, I'm like, oh, you see that book about New York City? It's very, very, very
Are you anti-library?
I don't always remember to go to the library on time and like return books. So whatever. It's money well spent. It's books. Okay. Yeah, don't judge me now.
Books are great.
So I told my son, I'm like, you see the book over there? I'm like, people who read the book are like, then like they're really cool. I bought it because he was like watching me. And then I told him I am not buying for myself another book from the Strand. Yes, from Amazon, but another book from the Strand until I finish The Power Broker.
Okay.
So they actually watch my progress and it's very, very long book. Each page has like 1 million words. So I'm midway through right now and I'm enjoying it so much. There's nothing there that relates to my work. But I just enjoy it. It's well written. It's good history. I walk around New York City. I'm like, wow, Robert Moses probably built this.
Right.
And my kids are following it with me. And it is so lovely. And I love Shabbat so much. Wandering Jews with Mijal and Noam is a production of Unpacked, an OpenDor Media brand.
Subscribe to Wandering Jews wherever you're listening to this pod. And if you're on YouTube, check out Wandering Jews there. If you're on Instagram, check out Wandering Jews there. And most of all, be in touch. Write us at wanderingjews@unpacked.media.
Our executive producer is Ryan Rabinovitz, and the team includes Jenny Falcon, Alex Harris, Rob Pera, and Rivki Stern. I'm Michal Biton.
And I'm Noam Weissman. See you next week.